The 20th millennium AD marked the dawn of humanity's interstellar golden age. Over the course of the previous 5,000 years, mankind had developed the technology and unleashed the will to leave the Sol system behind. Before long, the galaxy had been settled by billions of people seeking a new life. Early advancements in terraforming technology and the Long March colonists had led the way, but it was the discovery and use of the parallel universe of the warp to travel rapidly between the stars that transformed human society. The colonies of mankind were no longer isolated. They now had the potential to become a true interstellar civilization dedicated to the pursuit of progress and knowledge. The dream humanity's pioneers had envisioned millennia before had at last become real. With warp drive and navigators at their command, the savants of old Earth and Mars were determined to reunite all the colonies of the stellar exodus with their homeworld. It was now possible to quickly retrace the routes taken by the Long March generation vessels. The farthest human colonies had been out of contact with the Earth for centuries. The time had come for humanity to reforge its bonds and reunite as a single people. Crossing vast distances that had once taken 10 generations or more in only a few months, each reunion revealed a different story. Some colonies had become prosperous and now cradled societies almost as advanced as those found in their home system. Others had only scraped by, or even gone extinct after losing a struggle to the unique hardships of their new world. The lessons of these experiences weren't squandered. It was not long before the experts of the Sol system found a way to utilize this information to transmit to future colonists all that humanity had learned from its past exploits. Mankind had once pooled resources and expertise to transform Mars from a dead world into a thriving paradise. In a similar way, humanity would now share its knowledge to eradicate the hardships and disparities faced by its children among the stars. The result was a new technology, called a Standard Template Construct, or STC. The STC was an artificially intelligent database containing the sum total of humanity's technical and scientific knowledge. It had been acquired from the many challenges faced while expanding to new worlds. The STC provided its information in the form of simple, holographic schematics. These were easily usable even by those who didn't possess a deep understanding of science or engineering. When combined with fabrication facilities, an STC could construct nearly any device requested by its operator from local materials. This included advanced power generators, efficient shelters, and even military vehicles. With the advent of the STC, the technological differences that had been found among the existing interstellar colonies were erased in one fell swoop. Every person could now enjoy the same lifestyle as one born on Terra. Armed with the wealth of knowledge in an STC, a new colony could overcome almost any challenge. An era of breakneck expansion across the galaxy began, a golden age of human well-being and scientific progress. With every passing Terran year, warp-capable starships pressed deeper into the immaterium. They crossed first hundreds and then thousands of light-years in search of new worlds to expand the human sphere. As mankind spread across the stars, its technological wonders also proliferated. Enormous works of macro-engineering and planetary transformations on a scale never before imagined became possible. Countless hell worlds were terraformed into garden planets. The ability to manipulate physical laws advanced until humanity had developed anti-gravity technology. This allowed its vehicles and aircraft to move without thrust. Truly sentient machines were created that could cater to all of mankind's needs for labor and defense. Each of these discoveries was added to the ever-growing STC database. For many, it seemed as if the godlike power to reshape reality was at last within the human grasp. All these triumphs were made possible by mankind's access to the immaterium. Only through the use of the warp for faster-than-light travel could humanity cooperate to the degree necessary to advance its technology so rapidly. But this new reach brought humanity into contact with two other starfaring species who also owed their success to the warp. These beings were vastly different from humans in culture and worldview, and were capable of wielding the power of the immaterium in ways that were inconceivable to mankind. Known as the Orks and the Aeldari, each also represented a dire threat to human civilization. The Orks were an alien race spread widely across the galaxy who came into contact with human colonies many times over the centuries. At first, they seemed a controllable nuisance. Hulking, green-skinned humanoids, the Orks were barely literate and had no real culture of which to speak. They appeared to be bestial savages, their entire existence dedicated solely to the irrational pursuit of war. They lived only for combat, migrating across the galaxy in great armies called Waa's in the hopes of engaging in battle with anyone or anything in their way. Yet human observers soon noticed some troubling Ork characteristics. They proved capable of surviving assaults that would have killed most other life forms, and it was impossible to negotiate or reason with an Ork Waa. Even when the creatures were exterminated to the last Ork, new populations seemed to appear out of nowhere on any world that had already felt their tread. Those human worlds who managed to destroy Ork threats soon learned that the Greenskins were far more dangerous than they appeared. Orks were actually unique, symbiotic organisms that combined the traits of both animals and fungus. Due to their fungal natures, greenskins lacked complex internal organs and reproduced asexually through the constant emission of spores. Thus, each Ork was a uniquely resilient foe, capable of respawning an entire new population of its kind if even one made planetfall. But as humanity became more familiar with the greenskins, another frightening reality became apparent. The longer Orks engaged in the combat they craved, the more difficult they were to defeat. Human colonies that fought protracted wars with Orks discovered to their horror that the technology level of an Ork army could advance by leaps and bounds over the course of a single conflict. Armed at first only with simple weapons like axes and primitive firearms, the longer the Orks fought, the more advanced they became. They would unleash upon their enemies in rapid succession directed energy weapons, armored vehicles, piloted combat walkers, and finally even massive starships. Worse, it seemed that continuous combat caused the Orks to grow ever more intelligent. This allowed them to make use of better tactics and strategies to complement their new weapons. As the violence persisted, their numbers often swelled as other greenskins began to arrive from across the galaxy, drawn as if by magic. A human force that didn't realize what it faced could find itself swiftly overwhelmed by a foe whose skill, weaponry, and numbers increased exponentially. The only choice was to exterminate an Ork Waa while it was still small, or get out of the way if it had already grown too large. Despite all it had accomplished, humanity did not realize that it was possible for other species to use the immaterium in ways that it had never even imagined. Every Ork was capable of wielding the warp's energies, but unlike human navigators, they did so collectively and completely unconsciously. Whenever a battle began, the Orks involved started to generate psychic power, which they called Waa energy. The buildup of this incomprehensible warp power made it possible for the Orks to craft ever more advanced technology that defied all rational function. Though their technology appeared slapdash and useless, it was still capable of unleashing deadly effects upon their astonished foes. This warp energy also acted as an unconscious beacon that called other Orks to go wherever it originated. It could draw them to a fight even from light years away. While humans needed navigators to use the warp as a medium of travel, it tended to pull greenskins to wherever their species was under threat. They would continue to arrive subconsciously to eliminate that danger through sheer force of numbers until it was defeated. This mechanism acted to ensure both the survival of the species and its rapid spread across the galaxy. In theory, if the Orks fought for long enough and hard enough, a Waa of apocalyptic size and ferocity could form. It would be outfitted with super weapons capable of unleashing horrific effects that defied all rational logic. Such a catastrophe required the outbreak of war on a galactic scale, but the threat to humanity remained all too real. But if the true nature of the Orks' connection to the warp remained mysterious to humanity, the same could not be said for the Aeldari. Unlike the Orks, at first sight the Aeldari appeared to be almost human, save for the pointed ears and unearthly grace which made them resemble the elves of ancient fairy tales. Humans who made uneasy contact with Aeldari worlds also reported that these aliens possessed technology more advanced than anything ever achieved by mankind. The Aeldari civilization had progressed beyond the need for any physical labor to provide all the necessities and comforts of life. However, their tools and devices remained inscrutable and useless in human hands. This was because, as humanity soon learned, every Aeldari was born a psyker. Unlike the Orks, Each Aeldari had conscious control of their abilities. They possessed a mastery over the energies of the warp to such a degree that they could reshape the laws of reality to their own ends. They could read minds at a glance, or even crush their foes' weapons with but a narrowing of their eyes. Their technology took advantage of this trait, using solidified warp energy to create tools that interacted directly with real space. They could construct buildings, starships, even entire cities almost literally out of thin air. If humanity believed itself on the cusp of godhood, then the Aeldari had achieved it. Yet for all this power, the Aeldari seemed to act in erratic and amoral ways. Reports from some worlds described a people of great beauty and compassion, who were willing to peacefully exchange finely crafted goods and ideas with human traders. Others claimed that the Aeldari were a race of hedonistic monsters who enslaved and tortured any non-Aeldari they met. They were said to practice every form of torture and perversion, and no human was safe from their extreme desires. Even stranger, no Aeldari denied that their people acted in this way, or was concerned by such irrational extremes. The differing accounts of their nature could not be reconciled. In time, humans simply avoided these aliens where possible. If contact was unavoidable, they prayed that the Aeldari presented the better angels of their nature. Had humanity known the truth about the Aeldari, it would have looked upon them with a great deal more fear, and not a small amount of envy. For humanity, the Immaterium was simply a medium that made it possible to pursue goals more efficiently in real space. But the Aeldari's command of the warp not only allowed them to reshape the material world and end all physical hardship, it also let them claim a form of immortality. When an Aeldari's body finally wore out after many centuries, their soul simply dissolved into the Immaterium, to be swiftly reincarnated into a new form with the next Aeldari birth. The result was that each Aeldari viewed existence simply as an unending, waking dream. Each life's purpose was to explore the intensity of an emotion like rage or love to its fullest extent before the cycle began anew. An Aeldari might spend an entire lifetime as a murderous warrior, devoting themselves to achieving the most perfect expression of wrath, only to be reincarnated in their next life as a peaceful artist in pursuit of the ultimate ideal of physical beauty. The details of how this perfection of experience was to be achieved were of no consequence to a species that believed itself, perhaps rightly, to be the pinnacle of intelligent life in the universe. Such immortality even protected the Aeldari from these threats in real space, for as long as they could reincarnate from the warp, no threat ever represented an extinction-level event. This freedom allowed every Aeldari to care only for selfish goals. How their individual quests helped or hurt the lesser races was as meaningless to them as the life of an insect was to others. It was this reality that made the Aeldari appear so unpredictable and treacherous. As the 22nd millennium drew to a close, humanity moved a step closer to becoming like those mysterious aliens. At that time, a new breed of human psykers began to be born simultaneously on almost every world across the galaxy. These men and women were not like navigators, for they had no external mutations and could do far more than simply gaze into the Immaterium. They possessed the ability to directly reshape reality using the energies of the warp in a manner similar to the Aeldari. Some believe them to be the heralds of further progress, embodiments of humanity's coming evolution into a fully psychic species capable of all that the Aeldari had achieved. Others were terrified by the birth of mutants with strange powers they did not fully understand or control. Yet all agreed that their coming would forever change the course of mankind's destiny. What none could know was that these psykers were the harbingers of a new era. Historians later named it the Age of Strife, but those who lived through its horrors called it by another name, Old Night.